For today's video, big shout out to Dirk in the BJJ Fanatics group on Facebook. BJJ Fanatics is a collection of online instructionals for Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, and they have a Facebook group online, and big shout out to them. It is one of the best Facebook groups that I have ever come across. If you're familiar with Facebook groups, a lot of times, man, Facebook groups are just toxic, and BJJ Fanatics group is like, it's crazy because you got all these people who are really, really tough people who do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, they fight, they do MMA, and they are like some of the nicest people and most helpful people there is out there. And so Dirk asked a question in the group, and it was great material for me to do a video on, so I want to try to answer his question as best I can. He said, laughingly and jokingly, I am training for a competition in 2 months, a jiu-jitsu competition. What can I do to get in shape in 2 months, right? So, and he had a little laughy face there. And those are really a lot of good responses to that in the group. And there were some responses that were good if he was 6 months out or a year out from his competition, or good to incorporate all the time, all year round, but not necessarily the best thing to incorporate if you are 2 months out from a jiu-jitsu competition, right? So a couple of things with this question. I don't know anything about Dirk. I don't know what belt level he is. I don't know if he's ever competed before. I don't know his strength and conditioning background at all. I don't know what he's been up to and what he's been doing. So I'm gonna try to answer the question as best I can with my experience. I've been nerding out on health and fitness and strength and conditioning since I was 18, and I'm about to turn 37. I have tried everything under the sun to try to make myself a better athlete and to make myself stronger and more powerful and to put on muscle and to gain endurance and all those things under the sun over the past, basically 20 years. So I'm going to try to give you the best information I can. So in 2 months, a couple things that I want to break down. Number one, you're training for a jiu-jitsu competition. So the most important thing that you can do in that 2 months is jiu-jitsu, okay? Specificity wins. That's a hard word to say. But what you're doing for that sport specifically is the most important thing that you can do. So that is number one thing to remember. If you're a jiu-jitsu guy, jiu-jitsu is the most important thing you can do to train for jiu-jitsu. If you're a powerlifter, powerlifting is the most important thing you can do to train for powerlifting. If you're a runner, you get the point, right? So we want to keep that in mind. While there's a lot of things you can do to complement your jiu-jitsu and to complement your training and to coincide with your training, there is a ton of variables there. And a lot of that is dependent on how much you can train jiu-jitsu. Okay, if you are able to train jiu-jitsu 5 sessions per week, and you're able to also spread those sessions out and not stack them on top of each other like 2 sessions in a day. So if you're able to spread them out, like maybe you do 2 jiu-jitsu sessions, a rest day, 2 jiu-jitsu sessions, a rest day, and then 2 jiu-jitsu sessions, and then continue that path from week to week to week. If you're able to do something like that, that is optimal. You're able to train a lot. And if you have not been really training and it sounds like you're out of shape, just by the post, just from the post itself, I would gather that you probably are a white or blue belt. And I would gather that you're probably not super big into strength and conditioning and endurance. And obviously because, even though I could still ask that question today, because the more you learn, the more you realize that you don't know, if you had a lot of experience training, you'd probably have an answer. Whether it's the right answer or the wrong answer, you'd probably have an answer. So kudos to you for reaching out and asking that question, because it's a really good question. What are we going to do in a 2-month time frame in order to prepare you for jiu-jitsu? Okay, so we've already established jiu-jitsu is the most important thing. I would say training 5 days a week would be, if you haven't been training 5 days a week, it might not be the greatest idea to immediately start training 5 days a week if you haven't been training 5 days a week, right? Because there's your body has to adapt to the level of training. If you push it too soon, if you push it too hard too soon, you're putting yourself at risk of injury. You could be putting yourself at risk of overtraining. and you could be putting yourself at risk of ending up in a deconditioned state by the end of the 2 months. That's possible. So let's say that you are somebody who has been training jiu-jitsu. So I'm gonna give kind of a template for Dirk of what I think Dirk may be doing at this point. Dirk is not really lifting weights. Dirk is maybe jogging or running every once in a while, maybe once every couple weeks. He kind of knows that he should be in shape for jiu-jitsu, but he's not. Maybe he's training jiu-jitsu 2 times to 3 times a week as of right now. So let's say that's what Dirk has been doing for the past 6 months. Training jiu-jitsu 2 to 3 times a week and running maybe once a week, maybe once every 2 weeks, or doing some kind of cardio, and not really like structured interval training or structured long endurance training, just kind of like get on the bike for 20 minutes or go jog for 20 minutes or something like that. So that's what we're gonna assume. So in 2 months, number one, I wouldn't worry too much. I wouldn't worry at all about strength training, okay? And when I say strength training, I'm talking about when you look at doing a set of an exercise, okay, like a push-up or something like that for 6 reps, like a heavy bench press for 6 reps or below, okay? So we're talking like heavy weight, something you can only do 6 times or below, 5 times 4 reps, 3 reps, 2 reps, 1 rep. That's getting in that strength training territory. Not necessary at all. In 2 months, you're not gonna build strength in 2 months, in my opinion, or enough strength to even make a difference in 2 months. So let's throw strength training out the window, and I would go ahead and say let's throw out anything under 15 to 20 reps out the window. If you're gonna do any kind of weight training at all with weights, I would say keep it anywhere between 15 reps to heck 30, 35 reps, like, and maybe even up to 50 reps, no joke. Like, let's just throw strength training out the window. Anything that's like top end strength, super heavy, just don't even worry about it. You're not going to gain enough strength in that amount of time possible. So we'll start there. And if you haven't been strength training at all, what I would say is if you haven't been doing any kind of, let me correct that, weight training at all, let's start with let's go 1 day a week. 1 day a week of weight training. If you have not been weight training at all, let's go 1 day a week of weight training. You're going to do 2 sets. You're going to start week 1, 2 sets of 20 reps with an exercise. Okay, you're going to find a weight. You're going to do each muscle group, and you're going to do 2 sets of 20 reps. You're going to do a full body workout. So you're going to do leg. You're going to do, chest pressing. You're going to do pulling. Maybe biceps, triceps. You're going to do all that. Core, sit-ups, abs. Core work. Not going into too much detail there, trying to keep it simple. 2 sets of 20 per exercise, and maybe you're going to rest like 2 minutes in between, okay? Not going to go to complete failure, but just to where 20 reps is getting pretty agitating. Maybe feel like you got 2 reps left in the tank, 2 or 3 reps left in the tank. The next week, what you're going to do is you can increase the weight for 20 reps, or you can increase the amount of reps that you do with the same weight. Okay, so you can either increase the weight the next week or increase the amount of reps you do with the same weight you did last week. So if you did 20 reps this week, try to hit 21, try to hit 22. The thing about it is when you do this, if you do the same exercise week to week, you will actually be able to make a decent amount of progress in 4 to 5 weeks. You'll notice immediately that next week where you did 20 reps and left 3 reps in the tank, next week you can do 21 or 22 reps and still feel like you got 2 or 3 reps in the tank. The next week, do a couple more reps, and your body tends to adapt really quickly when it comes to reps like that. And you might even go up to 3 sets. That's another thing you could add in. You could add in the volume of 3 sets. But I would just start with 1 day a week of that strength training. Not strength training, weight training. That's more muscle endurance training, okay? That's what we want to do. You could do real slow reps. So let's put an example of a bicep curl. You could do really slow lowers, or you could do like isometric holds, which are really good for jiu-jitsu. So you could come to the top, really give like a 3-4 second squeeze, slow reps. So I would say keeping things slow, doing some pauses in between all your reps of all your exercises would be highly beneficial. This is going to gain you some real quick muscle endurance, okay? Your body's going to adapt really fast and you're gonna start to gain some muscle endurance over the next 2 months. Then on top of that, if you've been doing jiu-jitsu 2 to 3 times a week, we're gonna make sure you're getting in there a minimum of 3 times per week in jiu-jitsu. Maybe ideally 4 times a week, okay? Maybe you don't, I wouldn't say, all of a sudden start rolling all out, okay? I don't like rolling all out anyways because it puts you at high risk for injury. And so maybe one of those training sessions, you're not really rolling at all, or you're like flow rolling, taking it easy, you're not really going super hard, or you're just drilling, okay? Active drilling at 50-60% effort, it can be super beneficial. That flow rolling or rolling at 50-60% can be super beneficial, and it's going to help your cardio, it's going to help you not beat yourself down too much, and it's going to help your skill improve really quickly. Because if you're going in there and you're training to like all out fatigue straight out the gate, it can make your skills kind of deteriorate. It can make you get sloppy. Like you start getting really beat down and really tired and you just feel like giving up. Like you start giving stuff up, you start making sloppy mistakes. You don't want to train that way. You don't want to ingrain those kind of, bad habits in, okay? Practice doesn't make perfect, practice makes permanent. So however you practice it, you're gonna keep doing it. You wanna be careful of that. So you might increase the training up to 4 sessions per week. And that's gonna be your predominant, that's gonna be your main focus, is the jiu-jitsu, okay? If you feel too beat up and too tired from jiu-jitsu to do your weight training, don't do your weight training, okay? Make sure you're in jiu-jitsu. So that's your core, that's your staple of the program, is getting in there and doing jiu-jitsu 4 times a week. On top of that, add in your weight training. On top of that, additionally, if you still feel recovered, that's where I would say getting in some HIIT training is going to be optimal in this short 2-month time span, okay? So you can utilize HIIT training to really escalate your endurance levels pretty quickly, okay? Now, I love all kinds of training, so don't take that as I'm a all-out HIIT training guy, okay? I just think HIIT training can yield a lot of gains in a short amount of time. If we had 6 months or a year, this protocol would be totally different. I'd be talking about aerobic base building and all kinds of other stuff. And we'd be doing a lot of strength training, different things like that. Because you only got 2 months, we need to try to get gains as quick as possible. And I think HIIT training can yield that increase in VO2 max. It can yield that type of quick endurance boost in a short amount of time. So what you might do with HIIT training, okay, essentially what it is you're gonna get your heart rate up into that high zone, like 90% heart rate. You're just gonna get your heart rate there. Once you get your heart rate there, you don't really have to stay there long. You don't have to stay there at all. A person could stay there for like 10 seconds, or you could rest. So what you could do is, if you don't have any workout equipment at all, you can do this with sprints. If you're able to run and you're healthy enough to be able to do this, you can sprint, wear a heart rate monitor, wait until your heart rate gets up through the roof. As soon as your heart rate gets up to like 95% or something like that, you're just gonna stop and walk, okay? You're gonna stop and walk, let your heart rate get down until your heart rate maybe gets to like 60-70%. Once you're recovered, it's down to like 60-70%. You're gonna do another interval. You're gonna get your heart rate up to 95%, 93% again. As soon as your heart rate hits that, you're gonna walk and rest until your heart rate gets down to that 60-70% zone again. You're gonna keep doing that, and maybe the first time you do it, you might only repeat that like 3 or 4 times. Once you start getting more comfortable, what you're gonna do is you're gonna increase the amount of rounds that you do, the amount of repeats that you do week to week to week. You're only gonna do that session like once every 7 days, once a week, okay? And that's only if you feel good, right? We don't want you doing too much and getting hurt. So maybe week 1, you only do 3 intervals of the HIIT training. Week 2, you do 4. Week 3, you do 5, 6. Week 4, you do 7, 8 intervals, okay? And you'll continue increasing until, let's say you go do an interval and you get your heart rate up, you're on your 7th interval, you get your heart rate up to 95%, but then now, you're waiting for it to drop to 60-70%, but it's just not dropping. Like you're walking and you're doing like active recovery in between each interval. That's where you're just like, it's basically like a walk, right? you're letting that heart rate come down, but it's just not coming down, right? It's taking like 5 minutes to come down. If it takes 5 minutes to get back down, that's the point where I would just cut you off and you're like, okay, we're done with HIIT training for today. You know, you've served the purpose. Your body's not, you've hit the stimulus that you want, okay? Increase that until you get about 2 weeks out from the competition. Once you're 2 weeks out from the competition, or maybe even 3 weeks out from competition, that last, when you're 3 weeks out, okay? All right, so when you're 3 weeks out from the competition, that week you might, that's gonna be like your hardest week of training, I think. At 3 weeks out, that's gonna be a really hard week, and you might keep your weight training, you keep your interval training, you keep your jiu-jitsu sessions. Then when you're 2 weeks out, that week, maybe you cut out the weight training and the interval training and you do like 5 jiu-jitsu sessions. So you're really greasing the groove and you're getting more sport specific and you're doing nothing but jiu-jitsu 5-6 sessions. Then that last week before you are about to train, that's where where you're about to compete, that's where we're gonna have that taper week. Now you're gonna back off a little bit. You are going to back off in the intensity, back off in the volume. So that means you're not gonna do your HIIT training the week before your competition. You're not gonna do your weight training the week before your competition. Maybe where you've been training jiu-jitsu 4 times or 5 times, you're gonna cut it down to 3 times of doing jiu-jitsu. And even in your rolling, you're gonna, as maybe earlier in the week, the rolls might be a little bit harder, but if your competition is on Saturday, I wouldn't do anything hard effort after Wednesday. Just get yourself a little out of breath, get yourself breathing a little bit heavy, get yourself sweating a little bit, but don't really push the intensity, okay? Like 3-4 days out, you just kind of want to grease the groove. And that's where, to me, you know, you get your heart rate up a little bit, you get moving, you get some blood flow, you do a little flow rolling, you get yourself feeling good, you get yourself feeling confident, but you're not pushing the threshold anymore. Here's why. Because when you work out, when you train hard, you damage your body. When you damage your body and you break it down, you make it weaker. And then you gotta rest in order to make it stronger. Well, sometimes from really, really hard workouts, it might take 3 or 4 days to recover. So you see where I'm going with this. On Saturday, you want to be fully recovered. You want to be fully ready to go, all right? And so I know that's super simplified, but that's how I would approach it if I was 2 months out with the conditions that I kind of put on Dirk. I don't really know what Dirk's been doing for the past 6 months, but I figure, you know, I got to start somewhere because there's so many variables depending on what that person has done, right? But so let's talk now about diet. Let's talk about diet. I would not cut a ton of weight at this point. You're 2 months out. Here's the deal. If you want, I know wrestlers and jiu-jitsu people have been doing it differently for a long time. But if you, in my opinion, for performance, for output, like if you want to get your body composition dialed in, you want to get your weight close to where you want it to be, like you need to have that weight dialed in like 6 months before your competition. Like if I want to go into a competition and I want to be 10% body fat when I'm going into that competition, I want to be lean. Man, I need to get myself down to like 10% body fat, like 6, maybe even at the most 3 months out from the competition. I want to get that body comp right. That way, when I'm training for the competition, my diet, I can eat what I need to maintain that weight, and I can eat for performance. I can eat to fuel my body and fuel my performance. And I'm not in a calorie deficit. I'm not trying to diet and lose weight, because when you're trying to diet and you're trying to lose weight, you're just going to hurt your performance. Your output in the gym is going to be bad. Your output in your weight training is going to be bad. Your output in your cardio is going to be bad. Your output in jiu-jitsu is going to be kind of bad. Like, and you might not feel it the first 2 weeks of dieting, but after like 3-4 weeks of being in that calorie deficit, you know, you start to feel it, man. You'll be in your warm-ups and your legs start burning and getting tired. Like in your warm-ups, you start feeling out of breath in your warm-ups. You're like, man, what's going on? Why am I getting so tired so easily? Why am I gassing when I'm rolling? It's because you're dieting. You're in a calorie deficit. Your body is expending more energy than you're taking in. So I would say not to diet too much. I don't know where your weight is. I don't know what weight class you're planning on going into or something like that. But like my recommendation would be, just unless you're like really close to the weight class under you, like just be who you are, man. Just go in and be who you are, be what your weight is, and have fun and compete at that weight. Don't try to cut all this weight because it's just gonna make things really tough over the next 2 months. Could hurt your performance. It could make you kind of have some brain fog, and then you're not doing as good in the gym. Man, I just say eat good. Like, eat healthy, eat to perform, eat like you're fueling a race car, right? Like you're fueling an engine. You want to give your body good things that are going to help you really perform well. And for that, typically being in jiu-jitsu is going to be carbohydrates, and clean carbohydrates, potatoes, rice, fruits, vegetables, whatever works for you, whatever kind of foods work for you. But, you want to get carbohydrates. Protein is going to help for recovery and, building and repairing back those muscles that you tear down, and where carbohydrates are going to give you that energy that you need in the gym. So you want those carbs. So that's what I got to say about diet. Try to just eat healthy, but maintain your weight. I wouldn't try to lose a ton of weight in 2 months. I feel like that would be a bad idea. Another thing that you shouldn't do is definitely don't overtrain. I kind of talked about that when structuring your training program. Don't all of a sudden now start training jiu-jitsu 6 days a week and weight training 3 days a week and running 3 days a week. Your body has not built up the volume tolerance, I assume, to handle all that. And that's a fast track to burnout, a fast track to injury, a fast track to fatigue, and hurting your performance on competition day. So you've got to really have built up the kind of volume to withstand that kind of training for a long time, okay? It takes a long time to build up tolerance to that, unless you're just a superhuman genetic freak. So be careful about that. And another thing too is make sure you're getting plenty of sleep, 6 to 8 hours a night. Don't sacrifice sleep for training. I know, gosh, David Goggins would freaking kick my butt for saying that. But don't sacrifice sleep for training. Make sure you're getting 6 to 8 hours of sleep. If you had a hard jiu-jitsu session tonight at 7 p.m. and it really beat you up. It really ended up being a hard session. You had really good rolls, but your body's a little broken down. I would say get that 6 to 8 hours of sleep versus trying to wake up at 4 a.m. the next day and you've only gotten 5 hours of sleep to get more training in, right? Sometimes getting more training in is not optimal, and you got to learn to listen to your body, which I know can be confusing. It takes time to listen to your body, but trust me, if you're doing a little bit more than what you've been doing before, you're going to be better than you were before, and know that and be confident in that going into the competition. Don't sacrifice a ton of sleep days in and days out. It's okay to do it here and there, but don't the whole 2 months think all of a sudden I'm going to be David Goggins and I'm going to sleep 5 hours a night and I'm going to train all day long, okay? Not a really good idea. Long, slow cardio, you could sprinkle it in there, here and there, because it doesn't really, typically it doesn't fatigue people too bad to do long, slow, easy cardio. I will say in 2 months, you're probably not going to see a ton of gains from it, but I will say sometimes doing long, slow cardio makes me feel good. It does make me feel a little bit better. If I sometimes active recovery on a rest day, and make sure you're getting your rest days in on a rest day. If I just do a long, slow bike for 45 minutes, not at a high intensity, super low heart rate for me at 37 years old. If I'm doing it at a heart rate of 120, it doesn't bother me. It doesn't give me no fatigue. And it honestly just gets the blood flowing and makes me feel like I recover faster. Let's see. I think I have just about covered everything. I mean, I know there's a lot. Oh, supplements. Let's talk about supplements real quick. Don't go to taking any kind of nothing crazy that you're not used to, especially the week of competition. The week of competition, don't change nothing. Don't really change your diet up that week. Don't start introducing new supplements. Don't start taking new pre-workouts and this and that. Don't do that. If you're going to take anything right now, and of course, you got to always check with your doctor. Not everybody can take everything. But I will say some supplements that will help, that seem to help with jiu-jitsu. Creatine, okay? Creatine, ATP production, power output, okay? Creatine is a performance enhancer, okay? Creatine, 5 grams a day is something that somebody could take. Taurine helps with endurance. You take taurine and beta-alanine together. You take both of them. They complement each other. Take taurine and beta-alanine, your endurance increases quite substantially for a cheap supplement that you can buy. I usually take like 2,000 milligrams of taurine, and oh man, I'm not sure about the beta alanine. I think the beta alanine, I take about 3 grams of beta alanine. I don't have my, I take a scoop, which is, but I think it's about 3 grams of beta alanine. So beta alanine, taurine, creatine, those are going to be massive. Like as far as like taking legal supplements that are healthy, man, massive increases to performance like in a short period of time. They can really give you like a pretty good little boost taking those 3. And I'm trying to think of what other supplements. I mean, I take a ton of supplements. I'm a nerd when it comes to that stuff, so I'm always experimenting with supplements. Those are the 3 that I think really give the most true performance boost. L-theanine can give you some concentration and some cognitive boost. And then of course caffeine can give you some endurance and help with that as well. You can, just having a cup of coffee, take some L-theanine with it, which gives you some focus, and then the creatine, beta alanine, taurine. I think that's it. I don't know. I've rambled on a lot. I know that seems like a lot, but it's really, I tried to condense it down and simplify it as much as possible. If we were putting together a training protocol for 6 months out, if somebody was training for IBJJF Worlds, ADCC or something like that, man, the training protocol would look totally different leading up to that, right? There would be a lot of strength training. There'd be off season. There would be long cardio, aerobic base building. There would be a lot that would go into it. The diet, getting things, getting your body fat dialed in, things like that. You can work on your flexibility. That's something you can work on. I'd say like don't push it too much because it does tear down the muscles and it can fatigue your muscles. So like be sparing with your stretching. Like if you're going to do stretching, make sure you do it when you're warm. When you're really warm, like after your jiu-jitsu session as a cool down, or after your weight training, or after your endurance training, your intervals, stretching. And man, I like to do about 30 seconds. I don't like to hold too much longer than that. I'm not trying to do too much damage to make myself weaker, but just get enough that I can increase the range of motion there. But that's it. Awesome question, Dirk. If you got any questions at all, any more questions, hit me up. Feel free to hit me up in the comments. Thank you for the question. It gave me a good idea to put some content out there. I'm always trying to put, some kind of content and videos up. I'm gonna leave some items in some links in my description for some of the supplements and things I talked about, so you can look into those. And I do have some strength programs and things like that available. They're not going to be good for you for the next 2 months, so definitely not trying to sell those. But if you want to look into like a long-term training plan, that's something. I do have some of those available. But hey, thank you so much for watching.